Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Mr. English Lab, the place where your English grows, one story at a time. Today, the night everything changed. On a quiet winter night, something unusual happened to me. It was the kind of night when the air feels heavy, as if it is holding a secret. The cold wind touched my face gently, almost like a whisper saying, "Wake up. Something is coming." I was walking home after a long, tiring day. My hands were cold, my steps were slow, and my mind was full of thoughts that made me feel even more tired. I remember passing a small shop with dim yellow lights shining through the dusty window. I saw an old man sitting behind the counter, his head down, his shoulders heavy, like he was carrying the weight of the world. I didn't know him, but somehow I felt connected to him. Maybe because he looked exactly how I felt inside, tired, lost, and without energy to change anything. As I walked past the shop, something strange happened. I heard a voice. It was not loud. It was not sharp. It was soft, calm, and clear. It said, "You can change your life if you want." I stopped. I looked around. The street was empty. There were no people around me. Only the sound of the wind. For a moment, I wondered if the voice came from inside me, from a part of me that I had ignored for a long time. I stood still under the streetlight, breathing slowly, feeling the cold air on my cheeks. And then, something inside me moved. A small, tiny thought. A spark. A question. What if my life could be different? It felt strange because I never asked myself that question before. I always thought that life just happens. Things happen. Problems happen. People push you. Time pushes you. And you simply react. You go where life sends you. You take what life gives you. You wait for something good to happen. You wait for someone to help you, to guide you, to show you the right way. But that night, as I stood alone in the cold street, I suddenly felt something new. I felt that maybe I didn't have to wait. Maybe I didn't have to sit in the passenger seat of my own life. Maybe I could hold the steering wheel. Maybe I could change direction. That feeling was small. Very small. But it was real. A small beginning. I slowly walked to my home, thinking about the voice. Thinking about that strange moment. Thinking about the possibility that life could change. I opened my door, stepped inside, and stood in the silent darkness. My home felt cold, like it had been waiting for me to wake up for a long time. I sat on my old wooden chair, the one that always made a small sound when I leaned back. I put my hands on the table. I stared at them. And then I whispered to myself, proactivity. I didn't know much about the word at that time. I heard it before, but I never really understood what it meant. To me, proactive people were always different. They were strong. They were confident. They had plans. They made decisions quickly. They walked with purpose. They spoke with clarity. They looked like people who knew where their life was going. I was not like that. At least, not until that night. But something in my heart told me that proactivity was not something you are born with. It is something you create. Something you build day by day, choice by choice. I looked around my room. It was messy. Papers everywhere. Clothes on the chair. Unfinished tasks on the desk. And then I realized something important, something simple but powerful. My room looked like my life. Full of things I started but never finished. Full of plans I imagined but never took action on. Full of dreams I wanted but never chased. I felt a small pain in my heart, a pain mixed with truth. And I whispered to myself, maybe life doesn't change by itself. Maybe I have to change it. And at that moment, I made a decision. A small one. A quiet one. A simple one. But it was the beginning of everything. I will try to be proactive for one day, I said. Just one day. Let me see what happens. I didn't know that this one day would open doors I never saw before. I didn't know it would take me on a journey that would change everything, the way I speak, the way I think, the way I work, the way I love, the way I dream, and even the way I breathe. But that night, I took the first small step. And sometimes, one small step is enough to wake up your entire life. As I closed my eyes and slowly fell asleep, I felt something warm inside me. Not heat, not fire. It was hope. A small, gentle hope. The kind of hope that grows when you decide to stop waiting and start creating. This was the night everything changed. This was the beginning of my proactive life. The first morning of a new life. The next morning felt different even before I opened my eyes. You know that feeling when a new idea lives inside you and it starts to change the way you see everything? That was exactly how it felt. I opened my eyes slowly. The sunlight was soft, entering my room through the small window. It touched the floor, the wall, and then my face, as if the sun itself was saying, "Wake up. This is your day." I sat on the edge of my bed, rubbing my hands together for warmth. I didn't feel strong. I didn't feel powerful. I didn't feel like a superhero. But I felt awake. Truly awake. And sometimes, that is enough to start a new life. I took a deep breath and whispered, "One day of being proactive. Let's see what happens." I smiled a little because the idea felt simple. Too simple. But simple things often create big changes. I stood up and looked at my room again. The same mess. The same clothes on the chair. The same papers on the table. The same unfinished tasks. But today, I didn't feel overwhelmed by them. Instead, I felt curious. Curious about what would happen if I moved one thing, if I changed one small corner of my space, if I made one small decision. I walked to the table and picked up a piece of paper. It was an old to-do list. Many items were crossed out, but many were untouched. Tasks I had avoided. Tasks I had feared. Tasks I promised myself I would do later. I looked at the list, and then I said something simple. Today I choose. I chose one small thing. Just one. Clean the table. It sounded easy. Too easy. But proactivity does not start big. It starts with one small action that says, "I am in control." So I cleaned the table. I moved the papers. I threw away the trash. I put things in their place. It took maybe 10 minutes. That's all. But those 10 minutes changed something inside me. When I finished, the table looked clean, open, ready. And I felt lighter, as if cleaning the table also cleaned something inside my mind. For the first time in a long time, my space didn't control me. I controlled it. I looked at the empty wooden surface and smiled. What next? I asked. I didn't make a long list. I didn't make a plan that felt impossible. I didn't try to change my whole life in one morning. No. I just wanted to do one thing at a time. And for the first time, that felt enough. As the morning went on, I noticed something interesting. My mind was clearer. My heart was calmer. I started seeing small opportunities everywhere, chances to make small choices that could make my day better. When my phone buzzed with a message from a friend asking for help, my old self would say, "Later." But today I said, "I can help now." When I saw the plant near my window looking dry, I didn't say, "I'll water it tomorrow." I watered it now. When I remembered an email I needed to send, I didn't avoid it. I opened my laptop and sent it. And with every small action, I felt stronger. Not physically, but mentally, emotionally, energetically. It was like every choice whispered to me, "You are capable. You are awake. You are becoming the creator of your life." Around midday, something surprising happened. I got a call. A call I had been waiting for, but also a call I feared. It was about a job opportunity, something I wanted but never believed I could actually get. The person on the phone said, "Can you come in this afternoon?" Normally, I would panic. Normally, I would say, "Maybe tomorrow." Normally, I would create excuses. "I'm not ready. I need time. I need to think." But today, something new inside me answered. "Yes," I said. I can come. The person paused for a moment, surprised by my confident tone. And then they said, "Great, see you at 3." I hung up the phone. My heart was beating fast. My hands felt warm. And I whispered, "This is what proactivity feels like." Suddenly, I realized something very important. Proactivity opens doors that waiting will never open. If I had said later, the opportunity might have passed. If I had hesitated, someone else might have taken my place. But because I chose action, the door opened for me. I looked at myself in the mirror. My hair was messy. My shirt was old. But my eyes, they were different. They were alive. I got dressed slowly and carefully. I didn't wear fancy clothes. I didn't try to look perfect. I just tried to look like someone who was ready to try, ready to move, ready to say yes to life. As I left my home, I felt the same cold wind from the night before. But today, it felt different. It didn't feel like a whisper telling me to wake up. It felt like a friend pushing me gently forward. I walked to the bus stop, feeling nervous but excited. And while standing there, waiting for the bus, I had a thought, a simple thought that changed the way the rest of my day unfolded. Life responds to the energy you give it. If you move, life moves. If you choose, life opens. If you take action, life gives you more to act on. And that, my friend, was the first morning of my new life, a morning that taught me a powerful truth. Proactivity is not about being perfect. Proactivity is about being present. Proactivity is about doing small things, now. The bus ride that taught me a secret. The bus arrived slowly, like it was waking up from a long dream. Its doors opened with a soft hiss, and the warm air from inside touched my cold face. I stepped in, looked at the driver, and gave a small nod. He nodded back with a friendly smile, the kind of smile that says, "It's a new day, you know." I sat near the window, my heart still beating fast from the unexpected call I received earlier. As the bus started moving, I looked outside, watching the city pass by slowly. People were walking with bags in their hands. Some were rushing to work. Some were talking on the phone. Some were just standing and staring at something far away, maybe thinking about their own problems. And as I watched them, I asked myself a question. How many of these people are living their life, and how many are just reacting to it? The bus turned left, and sunlight entered through the window, touching my hands. I rubbed my fingers together and took a deep breath. I could feel my nervousness, but I also felt something else, something new, something fresh. It was courage. A small courage, not loud, not powerful, but real. The bus stopped again, and a young woman entered. She looked tired, maybe from studying late or working the night shift. She sat in front of me. After a minute, her phone slipped from her hand and fell to the floor. Without thinking, I leaned down, picked it up, and gave it to her with a smile. She smiled back and said, "Thank you." Her smile was soft, but something about it made me feel better. And in that small moment, something clicked inside my mind. Something important. Proactivity is not only about big decisions. It's also about small kindness. Because every small action, every smile, every help, every effort creates a small wave. And many small waves make a big ocean. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes for a moment. The bus engine made a soft, steady sound, almost like a heartbeat. I thought about my life. For years, I lived like a passenger, not just on this bus, but in everything. I waited for life to decide for me. I waited for someone else to make choices for me. I waited for perfect moments that never came. But today, something was different. Today, I was not waiting. I was moving. I was choosing. I was saying yes. I was trying. And that small difference felt huge. Suddenly, I heard a loud noise. The bus stopped quickly, and everyone moved slightly forward. The driver apologized and said there was a small traffic jam. People around me sighed. Some complained. Some looked annoyed. Some looked angry. But I felt calm. I looked outside at the cars stuck in the traffic. I looked at the sky, bright and open. I looked at the people walking on the street, each carrying their own stories, their own problems, their own dreams. And then I understood the second secret of proactivity. You cannot control everything, but you can control your reaction. Traffic jams happen. Delays happen. Problems happen. But how we respond, that is our choice. Before today, I would have complained too. I would have looked at the time and felt stressed. I would have thought, why is this happening to me? But today, I felt different. I whispered softly to myself, I cannot control the traffic, but I can control my mind. So instead of feeling frustrated, I used this moment to breathe, to think, to reflect. And it felt good. Proactivity is not the absence of fear. Proactivity is moving even when you feel afraid. So I closed my eyes, took a slow breath, and reminded myself of one simple truth. I am here because I chose to be here. Not because someone pushed me. Not because I had no other option. But because I decided. And that decision itself made me stronger. After a few minutes, a woman came out of the hallway and called my name. I stood up and followed her. My legs felt heavy, but they moved. My hands felt shaky, but they stayed steady. My breath was deep, slow, controlled. We stopped in front of a door. The woman smiled and said, "Good luck." She opened the door gently. Inside, 3 people were sitting at a table, waiting for me. They looked up and smiled politely. In that moment, I realized something. This room, these people, this moment, they were not dangerous. They were simply part of life. And life becomes less scary when you choose to meet it with open eyes. I entered the room and closed the door behind me. The sound of the door closing felt like a signal, a soft but powerful sign that I had crossed into a new chapter of my life. One of the interviewers asked me to sit down. I sat, my back straight, my hands in my lap. He started with a simple question. "Tell us about yourself." Before today, I might have given a short answer, maybe without confidence, maybe trying to sound impressive. But today, I decided to answer with honesty, clarity, and calm. I said, I am someone who is learning to be proactive. I am someone who wants to grow, who wants to take responsibility, and who wants to contribute. I am not perfect, but I am ready to try. The room became quiet for a moment. The interviewers looked at each other, then looked back at me. And one of them smiled, a real, warm smile. "That is a very honest answer," he said. We continued talking. They asked questions. I answered slowly, clearly, naturally. I didn't try to sound smart. I didn't try to impress them with difficult words. I just spoke from the heart. I spoke with truth. I spoke like someone who finally understood that taking action was better than hiding. And with every answer, my fear became smaller. My confidence grew. My energy opened. At one point, the interviewer asked, "Why should we choose you?" I took a quiet breath and said, "Because I choose myself." The room fell silent again. The interviewers leaned forward, slightly interested. So I continued. I choose to show up. I choose to try. I choose to learn. I choose to take responsibility. I choose to move forward. I choose to be proactive. And I believe that people who choose themselves can do great things. When I finished speaking, something amazing happened. I felt light. I felt strong. I felt present. The interviewers smiled. One of them nodded slowly. Another wrote something on a paper. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. You don't need to be perfect to be chosen. You just need to be honest, present, and proactive. The interview ended after a few more minutes. As I stood up, The interviewer shook my hand and said, "Thank you for your time. We will contact you soon." I walked out of the room calmly, but inside, my heart was celebrating. Not because I knew I got the job, but because I knew I did something brave. I opened a door I was afraid to open. And I didn't let fear stop me. As I walked out of the building, the cold air touched my face again. But this time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel weak. I didn't feel lost. I felt alive. And that, my friend, is the power of one simple choice. When you choose to open the door, life opens with you. The walk home that opened my eyes. When I stepped out of the office, the city felt different. Maybe it wasn't the city that changed. Maybe it was me. The sky was starting to turn orange, with soft light spreading across the buildings. Cars moved slowly on the road. People walked with tired faces, holding bags, phones, lunchboxes. Everything looked normal, yet somehow beautiful. I started walking home, my hands in my pockets, my breath visible in the cold air. Every step felt meaningful. Every sound felt clearer. Every moment felt alive. I could still feel the interview in my mind, the questions, the answers, the nervousness, the courage. But more than anything, I felt a quiet pride inside me. Not loud pride, not ego, not arrogance. Just a warm feeling that whispered, "You did it. You showed up." For most of my life, I waited for things to happen to me. I waited for confidence to come. I waited for inspiration. I waited for the right time. But today, I didn't wait. I moved first. I took action. I pushed myself into the world. As I walked past a small cafe, I saw a man sitting near the window, holding a cup of coffee. He looked tired, staring at his phone like he was waiting for a message that might never come. I wondered if he was like the old me, reacting to life, letting fear control him, waiting for change instead of making change. I wanted to knock on the window and tell him, start with one small step. Just one. But I didn't. Instead, I just smiled softly and kept walking. Soon, I passed a park. Kids were playing on the swings. A dog was running around. A couple was sitting on a bench, laughing softly. And as I watched them, I learned something new about proactivity. Proactivity is not only about career. It is about life. It is about how you move, think, speak, breathe. Proactive people don't just take action. They notice life. They pay attention. They look around. They see things clearly. They feel gratitude for small moments. They don't wait for happiness. They create it. I walked along the path, listening to the leaves under my shoes. Crunch, crunch, crunch. The sound was peaceful. The wind moved the branches gently. The air smelled like winter and possibility. I sat down on a bench and closed my eyes. I felt the cold metal beneath me, the soft wind on my cheeks, and the warm beating of my heart. I remembered the old version of me, tired, reactive, unsure. And then I compared it with the version sitting on that bench right now, awake, aware, moving. And then a thought rose inside me like a sunrise. When you change your choices, you change your identity. One day of proactivity had already changed how I felt about myself. I no longer saw myself as someone who waited. I saw myself as someone who tried. And trying is powerful. I opened my eyes and looked at the sky again. Clouds were moving slowly. The sun was getting lower. The day was ending, but it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. The beginning of a new version of me. I stood up and started walking again. And as I walked, something surprising happened. A woman who was running in the park suddenly dropped her water bottle. Without thinking, I picked it up and called out, "Excuse me. You dropped this." She turned around, smiled brightly, and said, "Thank you." Her smile was real, filled with energy. That small moment made me realize something else. Proactivity spreads. When you take action, your energy affects other people. Your courage inspires others. Your kindness changes someone's day. Your choice creates new choices for others. I continued walking, and soon I reached the edge of the park. The city lights were turning on, glowing softly like stars on the ground. I looked at them and whispered, I want to live in a way that creates light. Not just for myself, but for others too. And that was the walk home that opened my eyes, the walk that showed me that proactivity is not just a behavior. It is a way of seeing the world. The call that changed everything. When I reached my home, the sky had already turned dark. The streetlights stood like tall, silent guardians, shining yellow light on the road. I opened my door slowly and stepped inside. My home felt warm, not because of the temperature, but because of the day I had lived. I put my bag on the table, took off my shoes, and sat down in the same chair where I made my promise that morning, be proactive for one day. I smiled. That one day felt like a week. So many moments. So many choices. So many small changes. I closed my eyes and took a long breath. I felt calm, peaceful, connected. Just then, my phone rang. The sound broke the silence, sharp and sudden. My heart jumped. I looked at the screen. It was the company. The same place where I had just done the interview. My fingers shook a little as I picked up the phone. Hello, I said. Hello, the voice replied. Is this a good time to talk? Yes, I answered, trying to sound calm. There was a short pause. I could hear the person breathing lightly on the other side. Then the voice said something that made my heart stop for a moment. We want to offer you the job. I didn't speak. I couldn't. My eyes slowly filled with tears, not sad tears, but warm ones. Tears that said, I did it. I really did it. The voice continued, your interview was impressive. You spoke with honesty. You spoke with focus. And we could feel your energy. We believe you will be a great fit for our team. I felt my throat tighten. I swallowed and finally managed to say, thank you. Thank you so much. After a few more details, the call ended. I put the phone down on the table gently, like it was made of glass. And then I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes. I didn't scream. I didn't jump. I didn't dance. I simply breathed. A slow, deep, grateful breath. Because inside me, something bigger than happiness was growing. Something deeper than excitement. It was the realization that one small decision, one day of taking action, had changed everything. I whispered to myself, this is what happens when you stop waiting. I looked around the room. It was the same room as yesterday, same walls, same furniture, same window, same table. But it felt like a different world. Because I was different. Suddenly, I remembered the voice from the night before. You can change your life if you want. At that moment, I understood something powerful. The voice was right. Life doesn't change first. You change first. And when you change, life follows. I stood up and walked to the window. I opened it slightly, letting the cold night air touch my face. I looked at the sky. It was dark, but there were stars, small, distant, but shining with a quiet, steady light. And then I whispered something from deep inside my heart. I am not the same person I was yesterday. Not because of the job. Not because someone approved of me. Not because I achieved something big. But because I chose myself. I chose action. I chose proactivity. I stood there for a long time, listening to the night, feeling the fresh air, watching the stars. And slowly, I realized something important. Proactivity is not about success. It is about movement. It is about courage. It is about choosing the direction of your life. Whether the job had come or not, the real victory was that I showed up. I acted. I moved. I tried. I was no longer a passenger. I was the driver. I closed the window gently and whispered, today was only the beginning. And it truly was. The small choice that changes everything. When I think about proactivity, I often remember a small moment that looked simple but changed the direction of the whole story. Sometimes life doesn't change in big dramatic scenes. Sometimes it changes quietly, like a soft knock on the door. And that small knock happened one evening when I was sitting alone in my room, looking at the messy desk in front of me. There were books everywhere, notes everywhere, and ideas that never became real. I touched one of my notebooks, and I felt something strange, like it was full of dreams that I wrote but never lived. And suddenly a thought came to me like a wind passing through the window. What if I stop waiting and start doing? That one question opened something inside my mind. It felt uncomfortable because the truth is, I liked waiting. Waiting was easy. Waiting was safe. Waiting meant I didn't need to take responsibility. Because if I waited and things didn't happen, I could say, well, it wasn't my fault. But deep inside I knew the truth. Things were not happening because I didn't make them happen. And that realization hit me like a soft but powerful whisper. It was not cruel. It was not hard. It was simply honest. I looked at my life around me. My clothes were not arranged properly. My work schedule was always unplanned. My big goals were always someday. And when I tried to understand myself, I realized I had developed a habit of reacting to life instead of leading it. If something good happened, I reacted. If something bad happened, I reacted. If someone asked me for help, I reacted. If someone didn't, I waited. That was the pattern. And it was time to break that pattern. That night, I made a decision, a very small decision. I told myself, tomorrow morning, I will wake up and do one thing before the world asks me to do anything. One thing that I choose. One thing that I start. It didn't need to be big. It just needed to be mine. And that idea felt powerful, like I had found a tiny key. The key couldn't open every door yet, but it could open the first door. The next morning, I woke up early. I felt tired, sleepy, and almost ready to give up before starting. But I remembered my promise to myself. The room was still quiet, the air was cool, and the sun had not fully risen. It was the kind of moment where nothing looks urgent, and at the same time everything looks possible. I sat down and opened my notebook. And I wrote one sentence. Today I choose the first step. It wasn't a big step. I didn't run outside and change the world. I didn't make a huge plan. I simply cleaned my desk. Slowly. Carefully. I put the books back in their place. I folded my papers. I organized things that had been messy for months. And while cleaning, something unusual happened. My mind also began to feel clean. The noise inside me reduced. The heaviness became lighter. And this small action made me feel like the day belonged to me, not to the world, not to problems, not to delays. It belonged to me. As I finished cleaning, I felt a strange sense of pride, something I had not felt in a long time. Not because the room looked perfect, but because I was the one who made it happen. I didn't wait. I didn't wish. I didn't hope. I acted. And that small action changed the way I felt about myself. For the first time in many months, I felt like a person who could move forward. That evening, something else happened. My mother entered my room and looked around with surprise. "Your room looks different," she said. I smiled and said, "Yes. I started today." She nodded, not fully understanding the meaning behind my words, but I felt it. I started today wasn't only about cleaning a room. It meant something deeper. It meant I was finally taking control of my life, even if the step was small. And that's the thing about proactivity. It doesn't start with a big mission, a big dream, or a loud announcement. It starts with a quiet choice. A choice that nobody sees. A choice that nobody celebrates. A choice that looks small to the world but huge to your soul. When you take that first step, you begin to trust yourself. And when you trust yourself, everything begins to change. From that day forward, something new began inside me. Not a storm. Not a fire. just a gentle movement. A movement that said, you can shape your day. You can shape your path. You can shape your life. And every small proactive choice became a brick, and slowly, those bricks started building a new version of myself. That's how transformation begins, not with a miracle, but with a moment. When life pushes you, push back first. Proactivity sounds beautiful when life is calm, when everything is soft and peaceful. But the real test comes when life becomes noisy, confusing, and heavy. And that test came sooner than I expected. It happened on a day when everything felt wrong from the moment I woke up. The sky was dark, the air felt heavy, and my mind felt slow. You know those days when nothing feels right, when it feels like the whole world is one step ahead of you, and you're trying to catch up but can't? It was one of those days. I woke up late. I missed an important call. I couldn't find my notebook. Then I spilled water on my shirt. One after another, small problems kept knocking on my door. And each small problem felt like a tiny voice telling me, see? You can't change. You will always fall back. My mind slowly started to believe that voice. That's how it happens, right? Not all at once, but little by little. By noon, I felt tired even though I hadn't done anything. I sat on the edge of my bed and felt that old familiar feeling, the feeling of giving up before trying. I knew this feeling too well. It was the feeling that always came when life pushed me. And usually, I let it push me all the way down. But something was different this time. That small proactive choice I made the day before was still alive inside me. It wasn't strong, but it was there like a small flame trying to stay lit in the wind. And then something strange happened. I heard a voice in my mind. Not a loud voice, not a magical voice, just a simple voice. My own voice. And it said only one sentence. Don't wait for the day to get better. You make it better. I sat quietly, letting those words settle into my thoughts. You make it better. The words felt powerful, not because they were special, but because they were true. I had spent so many years waiting for life to fix itself. Waiting for motivation. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for the right feeling. But maybe life wasn't supposed to push me in the right direction. Maybe I was supposed to push myself. So I stood up. My legs felt heavy, my mind felt tired, but I stood anyway. I took a deep breath and told myself, start with one thing. Just one. I walked to the kitchen and washed the plate that had been sitting there since morning. It took less than 30 seconds. And when I finished, something changed, not in the room, but inside me. The day felt a little lighter. Then I did one more thing. I replied to one overdue message. And that too felt like progress. Then one more. And slowly, step by step, action by action, the day began to respect me. It didn't happen suddenly. It didn't happen magically. It happened because I stopped reacting and started acting. Later that afternoon, something unexpected happened. My friend called me and asked, "Are you free to join us? We're going out for a walk by the river." Normally, on a day like this, I would have said no. I would have stayed in bed and let the sadness grow. But this time was different. I paused for a moment, then said, "Yes, I'll come." The river was calm, the sky had cleared a little, and the wind felt soft on my face. We walked slowly, talking about small things, nothing important, nothing deep. But being there, being outside, being active, it changed the direction of my whole day. If I had reacted to the bad morning, I would have missed this calm moment. But because I pushed back first, life opened a small door for me. On the way home, I had a simple but powerful realization. Life is not always your enemy. But it's also not always your friend. Life is neutral. It gives you moments, some good, some bad. The real question is, what do you do with them? Do you let a bad morning decide the whole day? Or do you say no? I decide. That evening, when I reached home, I sat quietly for a few minutes and felt something new growing inside me. Not confidence, not pride, something softer. It was belief. Belief that I could shape my day even when the day tried to shape me. Belief that I could lead my life instead of following it. Belief that I could push first. That's what proactivity truly is. Not perfection. Not positivity all the time. Not being strong every day. It's simply choosing to act even when you feel like stopping. It's choosing one small step when everything feels heavy. It's choosing to push back, even just a little. And that small choice can change everything. The moment you realize no one is coming to save you. There comes a moment in every person's life when they finally understand something important, something that feels a little scary at first, but also deeply freeing. And that moment came to me one quiet evening when the world outside was calm and the room around me felt still. I was sitting alone, looking at my hands, thinking about everything that had happened in the last few weeks. The small steps, the tiny wins, the days when life felt heavy and I still tried. And slowly, something became clear in my mind, like mist disappearing from a window. No one was coming to save me. Not my family. Not my friends. Not luck. Not chance. Not some magical moment. Not a perfect opportunity that would suddenly appear. If something in my life was going to change, I had to change it. If something was going to begin, I had to begin it. If I wanted a better future, I had to build it. At first, this realization felt scary. Because I had spent years secretly waiting for someone to lift me up, guide me, inspire me, or show me the way. Maybe you felt it too, the quiet hope that someone will come and help you start the journey you've always dreamed of. Someone who will say the right words, open the right doors, or give you the perfect chance. But the truth is, life doesn't work like that. Life gives everyone moments. But you are the one who must choose them. That evening, as I sat there, I realized something else. I wasn't alone, not in the sad way, but in the powerful way. Because being responsible for my own life didn't mean I had no support. It simply meant I had control. It meant I had the steering wheel in my hands. I could turn left or right. I could slow down or speed up. I could take the long road or the short road. The direction was mine. The more I thought about it, the more peaceful I felt. Because waiting is heavy. Waiting is painful. Waiting is like carrying a weight you cannot drop because deep inside, you hope someone else will lift it for you. But when you say, "It's my weight and I can lift it myself," something magical happens. The weight becomes lighter. That night, I remembered a moment from my childhood. I was learning how to ride a bicycle, and my father was holding the back seat so I wouldn't fall. He ran behind me as I pedaled, keeping me steady. But at one point, he let go without telling me. I didn't know. I kept riding. I felt the wind on my face. I felt the movement. I felt free. When I finally stopped and turned around, he was standing far behind me, smiling. I had balanced the bicycle myself. I had moved forward without help. Maybe life is like that. For a long time, we feel someone is holding the back seat. And then suddenly we realize no one is holding it anymore. We are moving forward on our own. And instead of fear, maybe we should feel pride. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. I whispered to myself, if no one is coming to save me, then I will save myself. The words felt strong, but also gentle. They didn't feel angry or sad. They felt true. They felt like a new beginning. After that moment, I made a promise to myself. A simple promise. A quiet promise. A personal promise. I will stop waiting. I will start leading. It didn't mean I would become perfect. It didn't mean I would always be strong. It didn't mean I would never fail again. It simply meant that I would show up. I would try. I would take responsibility for my choices. I would take responsibility for my dreams. I would take responsibility for my life. Because when you stop waiting for someone to save you, something beautiful happens. You start saving yourself, one decision at a time. You become the hero you were searching for. And that changes everything. That night, before sleeping, I wrote one sentence in my notebook. A sentence that became the heart of my journey with proactivity. A sentence that still guides me to this day. No one is coming. But I am already here. And that sentence made me feel stronger than I had felt in years. Because now, I wasn't waiting for rescue. I was becoming the rescuer. The day you start becoming the person you want to be. There is a very quiet moment in life when you finally begin to feel something new, a gentle shift inside you, like a small door opening that had been locked for a long, long time. And for me, that moment came on a warm morning when the sunlight entered my room in a soft golden line. I woke up slowly, still half asleep, still not fully aware of myself. But as I sat up on my bed, I felt something different in the air, something I couldn't explain at first. It wasn't excitement. It wasn't motivation. It wasn't confidence. It was something deeper. It was the feeling that I was becoming someone new. I walked to the mirror, not expecting anything special. I looked at my face, same eyes, same hair, same expression. But somehow, I didn't look the same. There was a small spark in my eyes that wasn't there before. A spark that said, I am not who I used to be. It wasn't loud. It wasn't strong. But it was there. A little light. A little beginning. I washed my face with cold water and looked again. This time, I noticed something even more important. I didn't feel tired of myself anymore. I didn't feel disappointed or lost or confused like before. For the first time in a long while, I felt possible. Not perfect. Not powerful. Just possible. And sometimes that's all you need. That morning, I sat at my desk with a notebook and a pen, and I asked myself a simple question. What kind of person do I want to be? Not in the future, not in 10 years, not in the perfect version of life, but today. Who do I want to be today? At first, the answer didn't come. I sat there quietly, trying to listen to my own thoughts. And slowly, the answers began to appear, like small waves touching the shore. I want to be someone who starts. Someone who doesn't wait. Someone who tries, even if the try is small. Then another thought came. I want to be someone who finishes things. Someone who doesn't leave everything half done. Someone who stays until the end. Then another. I want to be someone who chooses calm instead of chaos. Action instead of fear. Focus instead of distraction. I kept writing, and the more I wrote, the clearer everything became. I was not writing about the person I already was. I was writing about the person I wanted to become. And strangely, I felt like I was already moving toward that version of myself. Becoming a better person is not like switching on a light. It doesn't happen instantly. It's more like a sunrise. First, the sky becomes a little lighter. Then the colors appear slowly. Then the world begins to wake up. And finally, the sun appears over the horizon. But the sunrise starts long before the sun becomes visible. You don't notice it at first, but it's happening quietly. That's how transformation works too. Later that day, something interesting happened. I received a message from someone asking me for help. Normally, I would feel annoyed or tired. I would think, why me? Why now? But this time, I felt something new. I felt capable. I felt ready. I felt like I wanted to help, not because I had to, but because it matched the person I wanted to be. So I helped. And while helping, I learned something important. Proactivity is not just about you. It's about the energy you bring into the world. When you act with clarity, the world responds differently. People trust you more. Opportunities notice you more. Life becomes smoother, not because it gets easier, but because you get stronger. In the evening, I went for a walk by myself. The wind was cool, and the trees were gently moving. I walked slowly, thinking about everything I had done that day. Nothing big. Nothing huge. Just small actions. But these small actions built something inside me. A feeling. a direction, a purpose. As I walked, I realized something powerful. You don't become the person you want to be in one day, but you begin becoming them in one step. And once you take that first step, the next step becomes easier. And the next. And the next. Until one day, you look at yourself and think, I'm different now. And I'm proud of it. That night, before sleeping, I whispered to myself, I'm becoming the person I want to be. And for the first time in a very long time, the words felt real. They didn't feel like a dream. They didn't feel impossible. They felt true. Because every action, every choice, every quiet moment of responsibility was shaping me slowly, softly, gently into someone stronger, someone clearer, someone more awake. And that's when I understood the secret of proactivity. You don't wait to become the person you want to be. You start acting like them today. And slowly, your life rises like the morning sun. The power of choosing your reaction before life chooses it for you. There is a quiet strength inside every person, a strength we don't always notice. It's not the kind of strength you see in movies. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't shout or show off. This strength lives in a very small space, the space between what happens to you and how you respond. And one day, I discovered this strength in a way I never expected. It started on a busy afternoon when everything felt rushed. People were talking loudly, cars were moving fast, and the world felt like it was running ahead of me. I was standing in line at a small grocery shop, holding a few items in my hands. I just wanted to pay and leave. But the person in front of me was taking a very long time, checking prices, changing items, asking questions. I could feel my patience slowly breaking. I could feel frustration rising inside me, like a wave getting higher. In the past, I would react quickly. I would sigh loudly, look annoyed, maybe even complain in my mind. I would let the situation control my emotions. But something inside me whispered, wait. Not as a command, not as a rule, just a gentle suggestion. Wait, before you react. So I paused. I took one slow breath. And in that tiny second of breathing, something opened inside me. A small space. A space where I had a choice. A space where I could decide how I wanted to respond. And in that moment, I asked myself a simple question. Will my frustration change anything here? The answer was no. The person in front of me was just living their life. They were not trying to slow me down. They were not trying to bother me. They were simply being human. And I realized that I had two options. I could react with anger and feel worse, or I could choose calmness and protect my peace. So I chose calmness. I shifted my weight, relaxed my shoulders, and simply waited. And something surprising happened. The frustration that had been rising slowly disappeared. Not suddenly, not magically. It just faded, like a sound becoming softer and softer until you can barely hear it. At that moment, I understood something powerful. Proactivity is not only about doing things. It's also about choosing your reactions. When you choose your reaction, you choose your peace. When you choose your peace, you choose your strength. When you choose your strength, life stops controlling you. A few minutes later, the line moved. I reached the counter. The shopkeeper smiled at me and said, "Thank you for waiting." And I smiled back, truly meaning it. Because waiting didn't hurt me. It helped me. It trained me. It taught me that emotional control is not about being perfect, it's about being aware. Later that week, something similar happened again. My phone buzzed with a message that normally would have stressed me out. It was a reminder of a deadline I had forgotten. My old self would panic. My old self would blame. My old self would run around filled with anxiety. But that small space inside me, the space I found at the grocery store, was still there. Before reacting, I paused for one breath. One breath is small. One breath is simple. But one breath is enough. In that breath, I asked myself another question. What is the best thing I can do right now? This question changed everything. Instead of panic, I chose clarity. Instead of fear, I chose action. Instead of avoiding the problem, I decided to face it. I sat down and made a quick plan. And within 30 minutes, the problem that could have ruined my entire day was solved. It wasn't life that made the day better. It was my reaction. And that's when something became clear to me. Life does not always let you choose what happens. But life always lets you choose how you respond. And your response is your power. After that day, I started practicing this new habit everywhere, in conversations, in stress, in confusion, in difficult moments, even in small daily challenges. And slowly, I began to feel something extraordinary. I was no longer a passenger in my own life. I was becoming the driver. Every time I paused before reacting, I felt stronger. Every time I chose calmness, I felt lighter. Every time I acted with clarity, I felt more like who I wanted to be. And I understood a simple but life-changing truth. Proactive people don't wait for life to be easy. They choose their response even when life is hard. This choice builds confidence. This choice builds character. This choice builds a better life. One pause, one breath, one decision. That is all it takes to change the direction of a moment, and sometimes the direction of your life. The hidden power of doing things before you feel ready. There is a secret that proactive people understand, a secret that many others never discover. And when I first learned this secret, it surprised me. It changed the way I saw myself, the way I saw my dreams, and the way I saw the world. The secret is simple, but powerful. You don't need to feel ready to begin. For most of my life, I believed the opposite. I thought I needed confidence before starting. I thought I needed motivation before moving. I thought I needed the perfect moment before taking action. And because of this, I waited. I waited for the right feeling. I waited for the right time. I waited for some magical moment when everything would suddenly feel easy. But that moment never came. And one day, as I sat at my desk, staring at a project I had avoided for weeks, I realized something uncomfortable but true. I wasn't avoiding the task. I was avoiding the uncomfortable feeling that came before the task. Starting felt scary. Starting felt confusing. Starting felt uncertain. So I didn't start at all. But that day, something inside me shifted. I took a deep breath and whispered to myself, "You don't need to be ready. Just start." My voice was quiet, almost like a soft echo inside my mind. And without waiting for confidence, without waiting for motivation, without waiting for the perfect feeling, I began. The first few minutes felt strange. My hands were slow. My mind felt heavy. My thoughts weren't clear. Everything in me wanted to stop. But I kept going, just a little. Just one more minute. And then one more. And slowly, something incredible happened. I got better at it. My mind became sharper. My energy grew. My confidence increased. Not before I started, but because I started. And that's when the secret finally made sense. Action creates readiness. Readiness does not create action. Once I understood this, my whole life began to change in small but powerful ways. One morning, I woke up with no motivation to exercise. I wanted to stay in bed. I wanted to avoid it. But I remembered the secret. So I put on my shoes before my mind had time to argue. I did not wait for the right feeling. I simply stepped outside. And guess what? After 5 minutes of walking, I felt alive. After 10 minutes, I felt strong. After 15 minutes, I felt proud. The energy didn't come before the action. It came during the action. A few days later, I had to make a difficult phone call. I didn't want to do it. I felt nervous. I felt unready. The old me would have delayed it for hours, maybe even days. But the new me remembered the truth. You can start even when you feel nervous. So I dialed the number with shaky fingers. But the moment I started speaking, My voice became steadier. The conversation went smoothly. The fear slowly dissolved. Not before the call, but after the call began. This pattern kept repeating in my life. Every time I started without feeling ready, I ended up stronger than I expected. And then something even deeper became clear. Being ready is not a feeling. Being ready is a decision. Proactive people don't wait for the perfect moment. They create the moment by acting. They take the first step even when their heart is beating fast. They begin even when their mind is full of doubts. They move even when their confidence is small. And the beautiful thing is, when you start before you feel ready, you train yourself to be brave. You train yourself to trust your own ability to learn while moving. You train yourself to become the kind of person who doesn't freeze when life becomes uncertain. One afternoon, I told myself something that has stayed with me ever since. If you wait to feel ready, you will wait forever. If you start now, you will grow forever. This sentence changed the way I approached everything: learning, working, improving, speaking in English, trying new things, meeting new people, chasing new dreams. I stopped asking myself, do I feel ready? Because the answer was almost always no. Instead, I asked myself, can I take one small step right now? And the answer was almost always yes. That one question opened many doors. That one question helped me become more active, more responsible, more focused. That one question helped me understand that waiting is heavy, but starting is light. When you let go of the need to feel ready, you free yourself. You allow yourself to learn. You allow yourself to grow. You allow yourself to move. And that movement, even the smallest movement, becomes the beginning of a new life. Because readiness does not come first. Action comes first. Readiness follows.